From redistricting to addressing increased energy costs to the Second Amendment, these are just some of the things that the State Freedom Caucus Network was asked about whenever they held their national summit over the weekend. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. I was able to go to Dallas to cover the State Freedom Caucus Network annual summit. Illinois Freedom Caucus members were there. You can watch some of the roundtable discussion that I posted to the Center Square's YouTube page. You can also watch Tom Homan's speech from Friday night. You can watch Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' speech from Friday night, the Q&A with the State Freedom Caucus Network leaders, and also, again, that roundtable from the Illinois Freedom Caucus and so much more. Again, that's why you should subscribe here to The Center Square on YouTube. But don't forget, you can get headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. All right, so they held a news conference with the state leaders of the State Freedom Caucus, and you're going to hear a variety of different things from different people, not from Illinois, but it gives you a general sense of what some of the Freedom Caucus members, which is a smaller section of mainly conservative Republicans in the Republican Party for various states, similar to the Congressional Freedom Caucus, right? But that's Congress. What about state level? Well, you've got state legislatures and you've got state legislators who are members of the Freedom Caucus. So one of the questions was asked, what are the main issues that the Freedom Caucus is really worried about here? And as we've talked about for a couple of weeks now, the issue of public safety in various urban areas and the importance of having stronger law enforcement roles.
Missouri, Nick Schroer, Senator in the state of Missouri. We've got Justin Sparks, the vice chair as well. Public safety is a huge issue for us, and I know Justin's going to talk about it a little bit more. But the first bill that we got to the governor's desk this year, Governor Kehoe, not a Freedom Caucus member, but he knew how important the public safety was in addressing the out-of-control prosecutors that are not holding these people accountable, putting them back out on the streets. So recruitment, retention of police officers, and keeping crime low and stopping it from spreading has been a huge issue that's gotten bipartisan support in the Midwest.
What we've seen in Missouri is our constituents want what is happening in D.C. to happen in our state. They want President Trump's mandate and his agenda to happen in their neighborhood, and they kind of ask themselves, why isn't that happening? It's our job to make sure that his agenda gets done in our state. That's what they voted for. So it's been extremely encouraging to see a presidential administration that understands, in order to get his mandate and his agenda passed and implemented in the states, that they're going to work with state legislatures, and they're working with the Missouri Freedom Caucus to get that done, which is why we see a special session for redistricting right now. And
we'll talk a little bit more about the redistricting issue coming up, because that was obviously on their mind and a question I had asked during that news conference Saturday. But other issues, obviously, border security, making sure that the border is being enforced.
Representative Rachel Kushel from Arizona. So in Arizona, and I think many of these other states, even up north, the border has been a huge issue. And currently in Arizona, we do not have a governor or an AG who will help us do anything about that. So getting President Trump back in 2024 was huge for us down there. And I know the border polls very, very highly everywhere. And that's why it's so important in Arizona that we get Andy Biggs in the governor's seat in 26.
You're hearing just some of the concerns about the issues that State Freedom Caucus Network leaders from various states addressed during their news conference. Another issue, energy prices soaring, 50-60% increase. Some people, businesses seeing a practical doubling of their energy bills, tens of thousands of dollars for some of these businesses a month tacked on. So obviously energy is a big issue.
Representative Jerry Schillinger from Montana, and that was actually one of the subjects that I was going to say is universal. It seems like amongst all the states, whether they're red or blue, in fact, we heard some stories about rolling blackouts already in some of the states this summer. We experienced that in Montana here and during the 2023 legislative session, actually, when wind energy failed in Texas and the backup gas-powered generators weren't ready for the cold weather either. So we have to seriously get back to baseload energy. Montana and many of the other states are rich in energy, whether it be coal, gas, primarily those sources, but to quit dismantling our energy infrastructure and make sure that the lights don't go out. It's just critical. And it's most cost effective and environmentally friendly as well.
And we've seen in Illinois, the Pritzker administration signing legislation that has coal-fired power plants slated to close in 15 years, 10 years or so. So that's something people are going to be watching closely here to see what is going to happen with energy. And even just the deadline being given to coal-fired power plants, that's keeping these companies from investing in those coal-fired power plants and just going to let them kind of just go offline. Well, that lack of investments leading to uncertainty and increased prices for energy generation. And when it gets onto the markets, you see the consumers having to cover those costs. All while they look at, building more solar and building more wind. But it's not because of those policies, according to the Democrats. They say that they're being environmentally conscious and investing in new energy technology. But the Trump administration now, coming in office in January, right out of the gate, signing executive orders to take away subsidies from wind and solar projects. So now Democrats are pointing to Trump, who's been in office since January, saying it's because of Trump that energy prices are going up, because he's removing these taxpayer subsidies from wind and solar. But when it comes down to it, you look at some of the energy grid operators like PJM, they've explicitly said it's these, quote, decarbonization efforts that are partly to blame for the increased cost and the lack of having, more baseload energy, among other things, the increased demand for energy from data centers or from artificial intelligence and such. So that's just, again, another issue, energy, that the State Freedom Caucus Network leaders are looking at. You've also got the Second Amendment, a question that was posed, and in particular, one of the reporters there at the summit during the news conference asked whether or not the Freedom Caucus has a position on restricting the Second Amendment rights for individuals who identify as transgender following some mass shooting incidents of individuals who were transgender going in and killing children in sensitive locations. And here's the response from one of the State Freedom Caucus Network leaders about whether or not those who identify as transgender should have their Second Amendment rights limited.
Hi, I'm Christy Zitto, Chairman, Idaho Freedom Caucus. The Second Amendment states that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. When we go down the road of denying the right to keep and bear arms to any class of people for any reason, that's a slippery slope, because then what's next? The problem that we have is a moral problem. Most of the shooters, and there are studies that prove this, in the last 25 to 30 years have all been on antidepressants of some sort. If we start banning anybody who's taken an antidepressant, 90% of the people in the United States probably won't get to carry a firearm. In the United States, our justice system was based on the idea that you are innocent until proven guilty. When you start applying guilt to an entire class of people, again, that is a very slippery slope. So personally, for me in Idaho, we would never support such a thing. Any other follow-up questions?
Is there any legislative proposal you would support?
The question is there any legislative proposals you would support on this issue?
I think that teachers should be able to carry, to defend and protect their children. I mean, just like in this case, the guy didn't even go in. He used a 2x4, the way I understand it, to block the door so that no one could get out, and then he went to the window and fired from the outside in. Had there been someone armed with those children, the scenario might have played out a lot different. The average interaction time with someone who has a gun and who is an assailant is 6 seconds. The average response time across the United States is at least 10 minutes. And in some rural areas like I live, it can be as much as 45 minutes to an hour. You have a right to protect yourself. That is a God-given right, defended and supported by the Constitution. Even the Supreme Court has held up that law enforcement has no duty to protect you. That's your job. And it's our job as legislators to make sure that our people have the full use and protection of that.
So again, we're hearing some of the Q&A from the State Freedom Caucus Network leaders, and that question was about, Second Amendment issues and any legislative proposals that the Freedom Caucus members would support to help curb mass shootings like what happened in Minneapolis recently. And, I was down in Kentucky a year ago and so on. Interesting to hear those answers, all right? And in particular, hearing that the legislative fix here is to allow for teachers to be armed. Caroline Leavitt at the White House was also asked about the issue of should those who identify as transgender have their Second Amendment rights restricted. Here's how the White House responded to that question yesterday.
I understand there were very preliminary, low-level discussions about this at the Department of Justice, and then sometimes those discussions are reported as fact. I'm not tracking any potential actions on this front, and I'll let the president weigh in on that. It's a policy decision, and it's far too early or would be premature, inappropriate for me to weigh in on it at this point in time.
Will we hear more about that? Not too sure, but again, just to kind of reiterate what the Freedom Caucus Network's response was, they say that, everybody has a right to protect themselves, and we start, by isolating certain segments of the population, like those, for instance, who might be on, antidepressants, that could mean you're disarming an entire lot of the American public who are law-abiding. They just so happen to be taking a antidepressant, for instance. So, again, sensitive issues, and just sharing with you kind of some of the back and forth. But another big issue that dominated this program for weeks was the redistricting fight, with Texas sending Texas Democrats to Illinois so they didn't have to vote on new Texas maps, while Illinois has the worst gerrymandered maps in the country. You had California working to change their maps. You got other states that are being asked to possibly change their maps. Republicans looking to get more Republican seats in Congress. Democrats looking to counter that so that they can get control of Congress. Obviously, this is going to be an ongoing fight, but when it comes to redistricting, the Freedom Caucus members sounding off on that as well.
Matt Morgan, Maryland, one of the most gerrymandered states in the entire nation. And look, I applaud Texas for bringing their legislature back to pass new maps and doing what Maryland's been doing for the last 20 years. 20 years ago, we had 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. They gerrymander, go 6-2. Now it's 7-1 with the Freedom Caucus chair, Andy Harris, as the lone Republican. Yet Republicans get 35, 40% of the vote. 2 of the last 4 governors have been Republicans. So look, Democrats, I think, are making a huge mistake when they're bringing this fight, because they might build a further gerrymander in a couple of states. Overall, if all the Republican states start doing the same practice as the Democratic states, we will pick up many seats. So their threats, and there's a legislation already in Maryland dropped to redistrict to try to get rid of Andy Harris. You get to a point in a state like Maryland where I don't think you could gerrymander it any further than it's already been. So look, we have the courts on our side on this, so bring it.
And again, that's also, just one state's perspective about gerrymandering. And in Maryland, they say they have a horribly gerrymandered map. In Illinois, I think basically everybody recognizes that the map is woefully gerrymandered. And even Governor J.B. Pritzker talking on a late-night TV show saying and joking that the map was drawn by kindergartners. But he still defends it, saying that it was, upheld by the Illinois Supreme Court. Yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker at an unrelated event was asked about the plans for Illinois. Is Illinois going to redistrict as well? Illinois is already pretty well gerrymandered. It's 17 Democrats, or rather 17 congressional seats. 14 are for Democrats. 3 are for Republicans. Can they squeeze out any more Republicans? Is that something that's going to happen? Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that he's had conversations about this in the past, but hasn't really discussed it too much further with Democrat leaders across the country.
Well, I talked to Hakeem Jeffries somewhat frequently. No, I did not have a specific conversation recently about redistricting, and I have pledged to him that I'll do everything I can to make sure that Democrats win the Congress in 2026. It's one of the reasons that you've seen me stand up in places outside of Illinois often, campaigning for people, helping state parties raise money because we have got to win in 2026 in order to stop the madness coming out of the White House.
Pritzker, obviously a billionaire who has funded not just his own campaign to the tune of, like $200 million, but he's also spent tens of millions of dollars on politics in other states. What about the idea, though, and back to the Freedom Caucus Network, of independent commissions drawing maps? There's an effort in Illinois that's been in the past as well to try to get a ballots measure to have voters say, hey, we want an independent commission to draw the maps instead of politicians drawing the maps. That's failed to get on the ballot. There's another effort to try to do that again. You've got other states that are looking at this, but Governor J.B. Pritzker in the past has said, state level, sure, but it needs to be done nationally so that, Democrats don't get their hands tied in Illinois while Republicans go and draw their maps however they want in other states. But the State Freedom Caucus saying that, at least one member of the State Freedom Caucus, not in Illinois, another state, saying that that kind of idea probably not the best idea at this point.
I'll say something about that. Jordan Pace from South Carolina, I don't think you can. I think it's inherent to the system. If you're going to have districts where you draw a single member district, you're going to have gerrymandering. I mean, this goes beyond our history, our political history, throughout the British Parliament. Where we came from. They've had rotten boroughs and problems with that for centuries. It's just an inherent system, and I think we've come to a point now where the left has been weaponizing against us. We just got to weaponize it back. And if we're going to fight, we need to fight, not with a hand tied behind our back. Again, back to the point, why does the South Carolina Freedom Caucus exist? When Congressman Norman brought this up of we need to make the 6th district, the one Democrat district in South Carolina, fair and not drawn to protect Jim Clyburn, the majority leader in the House, and the Republican majority leader in the House in South Carolina said, no, we don't have any appetite for that. It's just complete insanity.
So we are continuing on, and these are just some of the issues that are of the focus of not just you guys, the audience and the readers of the Center Square, but also all those involved in politics. And we'll continue to watch it and inform you here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus Daily.